Imagine waking up tomorrow and everything around you is different. Not just new leaders or laws, entire cities have transformed. Streets, buildings, even monuments look unfamiliar. The history you studied in school is suddenly questioned, and those in power insist, this is how it has always been. Some believe this has already happened, not just once, but several times throughout history. This idea is called the Great Reset. It suggests that history isn't a smooth timeline of progress. Instead, it's a series of cycles. Each cycle ends with a massive disaster that wipes out civilization. New rulers then take over the ruins, rebuild the world, and write a completely new story about the past. Want to go deeper? Hit that subscribe button right now and smash the notification bell, because what comes next will completely blow your mind. You won't want to miss it. Technology appearing too fast. In the 19th century, technology seemed to explode everywhere at once. Trains and telegraphs linked countries. Electricity lit up streets, fairs, and factories. Telephones, cars, airplanes, radios, and recorded sound all appeared in just a few decades. From the perspective of the Great Reset theory, this doesn't look like gradual invention. It looks more like lost knowledge being switched back on. Supporters of the theory point to city grids, power networks, and railways that were already coordinated as if someone had planned them long before they were built. How could people design something so complex without prior knowledge? Historians disagree. They point to industrial growth, trade, education, and urban expansion. According to them, knowledge simply spread faster than ever before. But the speed and coordination of technological advancement remains curious. Some cities even had large infrastructure ready before enough people were living there to use it. It's not just technology. Look at transportation. Railways were laid across continents almost simultaneously in multiple countries. Bridges and tunnels were engineered perfectly without the trial and error you'd expect from true first-time construction. Factories, communication networks, and city lighting systems all appeared as if someone had reused a blueprint from a lost civilization. And then there's the cultural impact. Photography records streets, public buildings, and bridges in fully completed form before the masses had arrived. How did cities appear fully functional before enough people lived there to justify the infrastructure? The mystery of the calendar. If the first idea is startling, the second is mind-bending. Some reset researchers believe the biggest trick isn't hiding technology, it's hiding time itself. They argue that after a global catastrophe, the new rulers who took over faced a problem. The disaster was too recent. People might still remember fragments of the old world. To cement their power and their new story, they needed to push the old world deep into the distant mythical past. So they deliberately added extra years, perhaps even hundreds of years, to the historical calendar. They created phantom centuries where nothing really happened. This made the last reset seem like ancient history, too far back for anyone to question. To support this, they point to oddities in our historical record. Why do architectural styles, like Gothic or Classical, seem to disappear and then reappear almost identically hundreds of years later? Why do the family trees of European royalty look so repetitive, as if the same stories and names were copied? Why do so many major historical dates end in round symbolic numbers? The theory says these are the seams in the story, the places where the timeline was stretched and spliced together. Mainstream historians find this idea impossible. They point to a mountain of evidence that crosses cultures and sciences. We have tree ring records, dendrochronology, that go back thousands of years, matching up across continents. We have ice core samples that show annual layers of snowfall. We have records from Chinese, Arab, and European astronomers all observing the same comets and eclipses at the same times. To them, the idea of hundreds of fake years is a fantasy that ignores this vast, interconnected web of evidence. The repeating styles are just that, revivals and reuses of popular art forms, fires, fairs, and sudden rebuilding. Now, let's look at a very specific pattern in the late 1800s, particularly in the United States but also in Europe. First, Act 1, the Great Fire. Cities like Chicago, 1871, Boston, 1872, Seattle, 1889, and Baltimore, 1904, suffered enormous, devastating fires that burned their wooden downtown cores to the ground. These were tragic accidents, often blamed on a cow kicking over a lantern, faulty wiring, or simple human error. Act 2. The Rebuild and the Fair. Almost immediately, these cities were rebuilt with astonishing speed and ambition, but they weren't rebuilt as they were. Narrow, winding alleys were replaced with wide, straight boulevards. Wooden shops were replaced with massive, fireproof stone and brick buildings. Banks, government offices, and grand hotels that looked like ancient palaces or European cathedrals. Then, shortly after this rebuilding, many of these cities hosted a World's Fair. These fairs, like the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, were like magic. In just a year or two, gigantic temporary cities of stunning white palaces, colossal statues, and glittering electric fountains were built on empty land. Millions of people visited, saw this vision of a perfect advanced future, and then it was all torn down. The reset theory sees a script here. What if the Great Fires were not all accidents? What if they were, in some cases, a deliberate tool? A fire is a perfect way to clear land, destroy old property records, and erase the architectural evidence of an older city layout. It creates a clean slate. Then, the new city is built not from scratch, but on top of older, sturdier foundations that survived the fire. The World's Fair, then, is the publicity campaign. It shows the dazzled public what their new world will look like: orderly, grand, and technologically marvelous. It imprints the new story directly into their minds. When the fair is torn down, the message remains, and the real city, now transformed, fits that new vision. The earth that swallowed streets. This is one of the most visual and intriguing pieces of the reset puzzle. Walk through the oldest parts of many cities around the world: London, Paris, St. Petersburg, Istanbul, San Francisco, Toronto, and look down. You will often see buildings where the current first floor is not the original one. The windows are partly below the sidewalk, looking more like basement windows. You can find doors that now open onto a wall of dirt, or grand staircases that lead down to a sealed-off lower level. The most famous examples are the underground city tours. In Seattle, you can walk through tunnels that were once the main streets and storefronts of the city before the 1889 fire. In Edinburgh, Scotland, you explore vaults and chambers that were once at street level but were later buried. The standard explanation is urban development. Cities often raised their street levels to improve drainage, install new sewer systems, or combat flooding. Buildings would simply build a new entrance on the new street level, turning the old ground floor into a basement. This was a common planned engineering practice. Reset theorists, however, propose a more dramatic event: the mud flood. They hypothesize that a few hundred years ago, a catastrophic global event, perhaps linked to a geological shift, a massive tidal wave, or a sudden climate change, deposited a layer of silt, mud, and debris over entire regions, burying the ground floors of cities worldwide. This event was so devastating it caused a break in civilization. When people resettled these areas, they didn't realize they were walking on top of an older city. They saw the upper floors of buried buildings sticking out of the earth and simply built new streets on the new ground level. The old architecture, which we think is from the 1700s or 1800s, is actually much older, from before the mud flood. Our history has mistaken the survivors for the original builders. The lost empire on the map. This leads to one of the most captivating parts of the theory: the lost civilization itself. What was it called? Believers point to old maps and encyclopedias. For centuries, European maps labeled the vast unexplored interior of Asia as Tartaria, or Tartari. Its people were called Tartars. Official history says this was just a vague catch-all term for the nomadic peoples of Siberia and Central Asia, like the Mongols and Turks. But reset theorists see it differently. They argue that Tartaria was a real, sophisticated global empire. They believe this civilization built the incredible, seemingly out-of-place architecture found all over the world: the ornate Gilded Age buildings in American cities, the grand train stations of Europe, the star-shaped forts found from India to the Netherlands to the United States, and the massive onion-domed structures across Russia and Eastern Europe. This was all Tartarian architecture, they claim. built with a lost advanced knowledge of energy, acoustics, and construction. Then, the theory goes, the mud flood, or another disaster, struck in the 1700s or early 1800s, devastating Tartaria. The rising powers of the West, the British Empire, the new United States, the Russian Tsars, moved into the abandoned, partially buried cities. They claimed the grand buildings as their own creations, suppressed the knowledge of Tartaria, and erased it from the maps and schoolbooks. In this view, our 19th century ancestors weren't building marvels. They were inheriting and repurposing them, while claiming the credit, the control of memory. If such a reset happened, the final and most important step would be controlling the story. After a disaster, the most valuable prize isn't gold, it's information. The new rulers would need to control the archives. They would gather up the old maps, the land deeds, the technical blueprints, and the history books of the fallen civilization. Some would be destroyed. Others would be locked away in deep vaults, basements of libraries, or secret rooms in government buildings, accessible only to a chosen few. New census records would be written. Old newspapers would be lost or digitized in a way that makes the originals vanish. City plans would be redrawn with new street names and new founding dates. Then, the new narrative is built. New textbooks are printed for schools. New official histories are published. New holidays are created to celebrate the new order. Within a generation or two, children grow up knowing only the new story. The old world fades into myth, then into fairy tales, and then into nothing. The reset is complete. History, as the saying goes, is written by the victors. But in this theory, the victors didn't just write it, they burned the previous edition and started over on a blank page. Architectural amnesia. A related clue is the phenomenon of architectural amnesia. This refers to old buildings whose construction techniques seem lost to us. How were the gigantic stones of some ancient foundations cut and moved so precisely? How were the acoustics of certain old opera houses or cathedrals designed to be so perfect without modern computers? How were some domes built that seemed to defy the building knowledge of their time? The mainstream view is that we underestimate the incredible skill and ingenuity of past engineers and artisans who had techniques passed down through guilds that were later lost. The reset theory offers a simpler, more shocking answer. We can't explain how they were built because we didn't build them. They are remnants of the older, more advanced civilization. The people who took over the buildings may have repaired them or added new facades, but the core structure, with its mysterious engineering, was already there. The knowledge to create it died with the original builders in the catastrophe. We are just caretakers of a technology we no longer understand. The pattern of star forts, scattered across the globe, from Japan to South Africa to the Americas, are peculiar star-shaped forts. Their walls form a series of pointed bastions, like a star or a snowflake. Official history says these were a revolutionary design in the 15th to 18th centuries for defending against cannons, allowing defenders to cover every angle with their own gunfire. Reset theorists look at their sheer number and global spread and ask, why does everyone, from Dutch colonists in Indonesia to the French in Canada to the Mughals in India, suddenly decide to build the exact same highly complex type of fort at roughly the same time? They propose that these forts are far older. They were part of a global defensive or energy grid network belonging to the pre-reset civilization, often called Tartaria. Their strange shape wasn't just for cannons, it was for a different, lost purpose, perhaps related to Earth energies or advanced physics. After the reset, the new powers simply occupied these incredibly strong, well-positioned structures and claimed to have built them for conventional warfare, their original function already forgotten. Whether you believe in a literal reset or not, the value of this idea is in the curiosity it sparks. It tells us, don't just accept the plaque on the old building. Don't just memorize the dates in the textbook. Look at the patterns. Ask the uncomfortable questions. Dig deeper. Because the truth about our past, whether it's one of continuous progress or of forgotten cycles, might be stranger than we've ever been taught. The past may not be a distant dead land. Its ruins might be the very streets we walk on every day, quietly waiting for someone to see them for what they truly are. That's all for today. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next amazing video.